Kathleen from Wasaga Beach. Well, it's going fast now. You want to help out, Catherine? Carol from Owen Sound. Shirley from Meaford. Heike from Thornbury. Heike and Barry. And Deb from Collingwood. So we've got a nice range around south of Georgian Bay of people coming in. So
and somebody from Saugeen as well.
Somebody from Saugeen, great. Welcome. So you know where your mute button is, you know where your chat is, and our speakers are ready to go. So I'm going to turn this over to you, June.
Thank you. Share my screen here.
So June, just while June's setting herself up, June's with the Southern Georgian Bay Institute and is going to do a bit of a run through of where we've been over this series at this point.
There we go.
Got it working.
Here. Put it on slideshow.
There you go, you're up.
I'm just trying to move a few things. I've not done this before here. Yeah, that's better.
All right, we've got a great crowd in the room.
Thank you for your patience.
That's okay.
Before we start officially, I would just like to take a moment to recognize the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples of Canada as traditional stewards of our land. As settlers, we are really grateful that we have the opportunity to meet here today, and we thank all the generations of these people who've been taking care of this land for thousands of years. So it's a real privilege. So I'd just like to, I'd like to also just welcome everyone here who has joined and is joining today for the fourth in our 7-part series, which is our Sustainable Future, Getting Inspired, Get Informed, and Get to Work. For those of you who may not be as familiar with the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay, I'd just like to share with you our vision, which is harnessing the power of people and place in Southern Georgian Bay to grow social and economic prosperity and be the smartest and greenest and healthiest, most caring region in Ontario. It is a substantial vision, but one I'm sure that we can achieve, and one everyone who lives here and is looking to live here certainly knows it's a very special place and very beautiful. Okay, I need to go back. Trying to think if I can do this a better way here.
While you're just organizing yourself, we've had a comment that some of your feedback is very echoey. So I don't know if it's your mic, just so you know.
I apologize for that. Turn the sound down, maybe that'll be helpful. Right. Back to screen. So behind, as I mentioned, this is a 7-part series, and certainly behind the scenes, there is a substantive design team that enables this to be planned and brought to you today. The co-chairs are Andrew Palmer, Julia Scarcella, and Adam Thackeray. Our facilitators are Marilyn Struthers, and she was speaking with you when you joined today, and Victoria Evans. And we also have Michelle Baker, Catherine Dow, Yvonne Hamlin, Rosalind Morrison, our chair of the Institute, and myself, June Porter. And we certainly enjoy getting this ready for you, and hope you will enjoy today. As was mentioned, our Sustainable Future is a 7-part series, and it began back in February 10, when it was, why build the case for a sustainable future? And we were very fortunate at that time to have the Honorable Elizabeth Dowswell, our Lieutenant Governor of Ontario. And she spoke very eloquently on why this was, why the case is certainly there, and set the foundation for our events that have flowed from there. In March, our chief administrative officers from the South Georgian Bay towns presented their pressing issues, potential alignment, and innovative solutions. Last month, we had Building the Next Economy, and we were privileged to have Sonia Sermon and Toby Heaps share their success stories. And they were very inspirational about what actually can be achieved. Today is about the changing role of municipalities. Mayors will be discussing how a regional perspective can help address issues, funding challenges, and collaborative projects. For those who'd like to be organized, mark your calendars, because June 16th will be a proactive approaches to environmental challenges. Then after a summer break in October, there'll be an event on sustainable, attainable, and affordable housing, something that is very dear to everyone's hearts, and knows that we're not alone in Ontario with needing this. In November, it will be connecting innovative towns and innovation districts. Also in putting events on of this nature, we work very much in collaboration. That's very much a theme within the Institute. I'd just like to acknowledge our lead partners. In addition to the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay, we have the municipality of Meaford, the town of Blue Mountains, town of Collingwood, the municipality of Grey Highlands, and the town of Wasaga Beach. And we have supporting partners, which are critical, and they include the Center for Business, Julia White of the Cooperators, and Greenland Consulting Engineers. And here we have, when you see another word I've been mentioning, it's very known in the title in the series, which is about the Sustainable Development Goals. For those of you who aren't as familiar with these, they are 17 interlinked goals. They're interconnected, and they were put forward and adopted by the UN, the United Nations member states, in one of their general assemblies back in 2015. And their goal is that these will be achieved by 2030. And they're very key and very important. And if you have a time, I would look at them in a bit more detail. And I'm sure if there isn't, there'll be a link in the chat, or you'll find something on the Institute's website that will provide more information regarding this. So it is in particular Sustainable Development Goal number 11 that is central to the themes across the events. And that is about making cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. So let's get started. And it is with great privilege that I now turn over the event to Rosalind Morrison, the chair of the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay, for her opening remarks. And over to you, Roz. Thank you.
Thanks very much, June. I'm going to ask you to close the screen, please. And I'm going to thank all of you for spending this beautiful day with us together, to think together and act together in terms of how we can build back differently on many levels. I want to remind us, and for those of you who are just joining us today for the first time in this series, some of the context and the inspiration for where we are today. Last year, the Institute, which is a fledgling volunteer-run organization, did the pivot like so many others, and we had a series called Mapping Our Road to Recovery. And over 200 people through the series participated, and 4 strategies were developed in terms of how we could strengthen our recovery. And the Institute, along with several collaborative partners, are working on those 4 initiatives. And what happened after that was very surprising to me, and I was delighted that the UN Habitat and Towns Collingwood World Summit took place in September of last year. And what June was talking about in terms of the interconnected 17 Sustainable Development Goals, this particular summit focused on Goal 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities. And then we thought perhaps we should really begin to unpack the reality of how these 17 goals could be achieved, because as June said, they're pretty ambitious. So is the vision of the Institute. And so how do we do that? How do we work together? How do we learn together? How do we align our objectives? And then how do we share resources so that we can accelerate progress along those lines? So that's why we launched our Sustainable Future in February. And the Lieutenant Governor did do a fabulous job on stating a very strong case for why we should build a sustainable future. And then the intent of the rest of the events is to really bring to you examples of success stories in terms of how organizations, institutions, municipal governments, individuals, not-for-profits, and philanthropists are working together to accelerate progress. So thank you again for coming today. We have a wonderful group of people. It looks like we're about over 80 now. And we have 4 mayors and 1 deputy mayor that I would love to introduce you to. I also see that Mayor Doug Measures from Clearview has joined us as one of the participants in the audience. So thank you, Doug, for that, and we'll be in touch. Before we go to introductions, I just want to highlight some of the themes that we've been hearing over this series, which includes 6 major ones. The first is, how do we develop a sustainable framework to manage what is needed in our communities, as well as managing, I believe it was Rob Armstrong, CAO of Meaford, who called it the tsunami of development coming. The second theme was all about affordable and attainable housing. Call it whatever you like, but I think it's pretty well understood across the region that a needs assessment for the kinds of housing is really what should probably be done, so that we can deal with, I believe it was Sean Everett, CAO of the Blue Mountains, and Sonia Skinner, CAO of Collingwood, who started to use the term, we actually need to increase the overall stock and range of housing. That's the big issue. Number 3 is greater economic and ecological sustainability towards green development and investment. And we're all learning together what that actually means and how it can be accomplished. But you might want to check out something called the donut economy, which we shared a little bit about in our last session. Kate Rayworth is out of the United Kingdom, has developed a really easily digestible image of the fact that we are reaching in economic ceilings, we're reaching ecological ceilings, and how do we do things differently and create a more balanced world. The fourth one is close to everyone's heart, really. It's about the ability to improve social well-being. And social well-being includes so many things, but certainly we've all been feeling it through COVID. We know that it includes diversity, mental health, safety, among many other interrelated issues. The fifth one was really featured through George Vadaboncourt, the CAO of Wasaga Beach, when he spoke eloquently about the need for increased civic engagement in the decisions that matter from every age, every walk of life, in order to build a strong society where all the sectors are working together. The sixth one is something that we've got a 14-member group, many of whom are on this call, studying. We've got a study group around social finance, because number 6 theme was really, we need to find more access to capital. And we need to find it in particular for social ventures that support that triple bottom line, our people, culture, and our beautiful environment. So those are the themes that we've heard so far. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce the speakers for today. First speaker will be Barb Clumpus. Mayor Barb Clumpus is in her second term as mayor of the municipality of Meaford and her third term on council. During her tenure, Barb has championed issues including the trade curriculum and the new composite school build, access to primary health care and hospital services, effective policing, attainable housing, and community and economic development. Welcome, Barb. Our second speaker will be Mayor Paul McQueen. Paul has served in municipal office for 16 years, the past 5 as mayor of Grey Highlands. In addition, Paul has served 3 terms on Grey County's council, last year as warden. He is dedicated to affordable housing, newcomer attraction, services for seniors, economic development, and tourism. Paul also serves as a commissioner of the Niagara Escarpment Commission. Welcome, Paul. Our third speaker will be Rob Potter. Rob is the deputy mayor of the Blue Mountains, serving on both the town council and Grey County Council. Rob is also council representative on the Blue Mountains Public Library Board, the Craigley Heritage Depot Community Advisory Council, and the Thornbury BIA. In addition, Rob serves on the town's Communications Advisory Committee, the Committee of Adjustment, and chairs the Rural Access to Broadband Internet Technology Task Force. Thank goodness. Thanks for that, Rob. Welcome. Our fourth speaker will be Mayor Brian Saunderson. Brian is a father, husband, lawyer, teacher, coach, volunteer, and municipal politician. Prior to becoming mayor of Collingwood, Brian served as deputy mayor and has participated on numerous council committees. In addition, Brian practiced law for over 22 years, starting his career in Ottawa with a national firm before joining Christie Cummings, a local law firm. Brian has also taught business law and ethics at Georgian College. He is a great believer in the power of the individual in our communities and has served on many boards of not-for-profit organizations locally, provincially, and nationally. Welcome, Brian. And our fifth and final speaker will be Mayor Nina Bifolchi. Nina has been a member of the Wasaga Beach Town Council since 2006. She has served 2 terms as councillor, 1 as deputy mayor, and this is her first term as mayor. While on council, Nina has served on various committees and has devoted a substantial amount of time to the Twin Pad Arena and Library Steering Group, as well as the Economic Recovery Task Force. In addition, Nina serves as council's representative on the Chamber of Commerce and is in her second term as a County of Simcoe councillor. Nina chairs the Regional Government Review for Service Delivery and was the former chair of the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. Welcome, Nina. So it's going to be a wonderful presentation style, one speaker after another, and then we'll have a moderated question and answer period. And I believe, Barb, you are up first. So what I'm going to try to do here is put your slide on the screen.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Marilyn, for the kind introduction and for inviting me to participate in this afternoon. And welcome, everyone. Thank you for your attendance as well. We were given some guidance into what we are to speak about this afternoon, so I'll just jump right in. While traditional, consistent processes in response to defined priorities and the official plan have been the mainstay role for municipalities, in this environment of pandemic recovery and rapid growth, a shift in the performance of this role will help to meet current service delivery standards and balance that with expectations that come with growth. A broader partnership strategy drawing upon knowledge and experience from a variety of providers is an opportunity to serve our communities better. A regionalized approach may change the traditional municipal landscape But what remains constant is the strong governance and leadership required to successfully steer and facilitate that change. We were asked to name 3 top issues, and we are experiencing escalating growth, rapid development, and a corresponding change in demographics and expectations. Managing this, we will refresh the vision for Meaford to support this growing community that is inclusive of new and established residents, recognizing the small urban and rural mix in our community so that all feel represented. Revising the official plan to guide Meaford's land use and development strategies is our second issue. This will set the community's goals and objectives, and council and staff will then establish the policies to direct the form, location, nature of, and the acceptable rate of growth and change for the future. This review will include a view through the lens of our community health and wellness plan that is age-friendly, inclusive, accessible, with access to social services, for example, primary health care, safety, and of course, diversified housing. And through the existing sustainability plan that satisfies our present needs, but does not compromise those of future generations. Fiscal responsibility is always a priority. Our third issue is a comprehensive service delivery review. It's a challenge to deliver public services that can adapt to changing needs, new technology, funding opportunities, and social progression. We're preparing for a full review of municipal services that, in concert with the updated official plan, will identify opportunities to improve upon our current service delivery model. So what are the biggest barriers we face? As we preserve our past, embrace our future, and maintain an identity that prompts our residents to proudly say, "We love it here," there are challenges ahead. In our current environment, there's an uncertain yet pressing need post-pandemic for economic and social recovery. We have a very clear understanding of the need to support recovery. But just as there was no blueprint for managing the pandemic, there is no playbook yet for how to proceed with recovery. The heightened sense of urgency coming from the development demands we are experiencing comes concurrently while we are planning for and providing all the ingredients for a healthy, vibrant community. But perhaps the most significant barriers are limited resources, infrastructure needs, and the limited capacity of our wastewater treatment facility. Some services our residents expect and deserve, such as healthcare, education, inter-community transportation, are not confined within demarcated boundaries, and yet they are of concern to each and every one of our local communities. A more comprehensive perspective shifts the thinking from isolated inward activity to one that builds partnerships and networks and inspires a creative connection to the wider community. Each municipality will bring to these discussions different challenges and their level of response to them. Also, each may have different resource capabilities and priorities. However, this presents a welcome opportunity to benefit from learned experiences, as well as encouraging awareness of the potential on the horizon. A key to successful collaboration is the political mindset to blur any confining municipal boundaries and to actively engage in the spirit of achieving an innovative evolution to the greater benefit of the entire region. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Barb. That was a great summary of the issues. I'm going to turn it over directly to Mayor Paul McQueen.
Well, thank you, Rosalind. And again, thank you for inviting me to this fantastic forum, not only for the speakers, for everybody watching today. I mean, the question was raised as the changing role of municipalities. And I will say that in my intro, I have 16 years of experience, but I do have 6 years prior to our amalgamation of Grey Highlands. So, which gives me sort of 24 years, but also of a bit of a perspective, even before we amalgamated here in Grey County. Largest one I would say and I would say this in a positive way, is we have a better informed public and more engaged. There's more demands on hospital healthcare funding, doctor recruitment, enhanced police services, better roads and maintenance, more toward 24-hour service, enhanced garbage collection, and more demand on our social health for our community. We've seen a big transformation in our agricultural sector, and certainly with regards to changes in the library services that we provide. From a point of what are the three sort of the main issues that we find here in Grey Highlands, and there are more than three, but I tried to zero in on the three that I thought that sort of come to mind. And certainly, and it's been raised here in other forums or other sessions here with regards to the affordable, attainable housing. You know, as I think it was just reported just recently that the cost of housing just this past year has gone up 30%. And I've asked people, have you ever heard of that before? 30% increase in housing in 1 year. It's just remarkable. Also, better broadband, and we've certainly set up a task force on looking at and its continuing demand. And we've seen that with more so with the COVID situation that we're in. And certainly sustainable, balanced, and development pressures that we are seeing. Certainly from a little bit of a perspective from our official plan, this sort of gives us the guidance of what we do in the municipality of Grey Highlands. And the Corporation of the Grey Highlands will ensure that the values of a diverse, creative, healthy, and vibrant rural agricultural community are achieved through good governance, community engagement, advocacy. And we define healthy community as safe, has affordable housing, work for all who want to work, healthy and safe environment, and a sustainable ecosystem recognizes and improves accessibility, access to healthcare services with a focus on prevention and staying healthy. Certainly from a vibrant community, encourages and celebrates art, culture, and physical well-being, offers long life learning, and encourages that everyone gets involved, living and dying with dignity are community values. Safety is both a community responsibility and a personal responsibility. Civic engagement is considered a duty. Sustainable economic growth is cultivated. Protection of our environment and historical places is a shared value. Note the healthy and vibrant definitions were adapted from the World Health Organizations. Everything that the municipality does is measured against our vision, and we can say that we are providing good governance, community engagement, and advocacy. Certainly, moving on then to other points, is the biggest barrier, and somewhat is mentioned by Barb herself as well, is the growth. And you have jobs versus housing. And you know, you try to build an employee base, because we do have a few large manufacturers or businesses like Chapman's and Ice River Springs in Grey Highlands that does source out those employee demands. Certainly the support of local trades, the tourism and destination is sort of those things that sort of have put a lot of pressures on our area. Some solutions is, you know, regionally we need to work together as we have started those processes. Over tourism is certainly an issue that we have seen as an issue, but I wonder if we could sort of shift that regionally so we move people around throughout our region so it doesn't specifically focus on one area. We know the weather does have a lot to do with tourism, whether it's the summer or the winter with regards to those seasons. And working together and possibly with joint committees through our 6 municipalities that are in our region, and looking at better ways of communicating and sharing ideas and innovations that we have provided. I want to close by saying that one of the things that Grey Highlands is doing right now is working with the town of Blue Mountains. We have a particular road, the Pretty River Road, that is very much desired for the cycling part of our community, which we see. And we're going to try to improve that sector for better safety, signage, and just overall sharing of that road. And we hope that's maybe a model that can continue on throughout our region. So again, thank you for having me today, and I look forward to the questions later on.
Great, thanks so much, Paul. you brought up a few things that we might cover in the Q&A period. And now I'd like to turn it over to Rob Potter, Deputy Mayor of the Blue Mountains.
Thank you, Rosalind. And on behalf of Mayor L.R. Swever, he had a previous engagement today and couldn't be with us. So he asked me to sit in for him, which is always a big job because he is such a whiz with numbers. But the sustainability issue is one that's near and dear to my heart. I was part of the original committee that drafted the Sustainable Path document about 12 years ago now. It unfortunately really didn't get off the ground. But this time with the current council, I think you'll find that these things will happen. The same goes with something near and dear to June Porter's heart, and that is physician recruitment. And we've been putting a lot of work into that. So if you ask me how municipalities are going to change post-pandemic, there are, I don't think that they're going to change very much. I think we've had a few more things added to our plates. I think we'd all agree not much has disappeared. So the whole sphere of sustainability will be even more important in the wake of COVID. What was already a complex web of issues and challenges and opportunities has grown even more bigger, more complicated. Issues that were barely noticed 18 months ago have jumped to the front of the line today. Others are the same that we've been dealing with for years, but they've changed in terms of scope and texture. Growth and transportation are a couple. And we have to look at the regional approach as one of the opportunities. The problem is always the question of regionalization without centralization. In other words, if everything moves to the larger population centers, then we just put more traffic on the roads. So we have to be careful about how we do that. We have to right size regionalization. We do work with our neighbors on many things, especially with Great Highlands. We now have the regional mayors meeting. That was the brainchild of Mayor Saunderson. I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more about that. But we all understand that the regional approach is very important, but getting it right is really the challenge. It's not simple. Changing populations, and I believe I have a slide that was provided. If we could put that up now. And what it shows is some statistics on how our demographics were already changing before the pandemic. They are changing even more as we move forward. So we know, for example, that we're seeing more and more people move to the area of Southern Georgian Bay. The Blue Mountains in particular is seeing a lot of construction. If we go to the second slide, and there's some numbers that this is actually Mayor Swever that put this chart together. The important number, if you look at the number of private dwellings, and then look at the number of dwellings occupied by usual residents, you could see, especially in the Blue Mountains, we have a lot of homes that were occupied on a part-time basis that are now becoming more and more are being occupied on a full-time basis. We know, for example, that enrollment at our local school has gone up by about 200 students. That brings to the fore the whole issue of sustainability, which we see as having three pillars: economic, social, and cultural, as well as the obvious environmental and ecological issues that are dealing with. We recognize, for example, that we have to address the coastal issues that all of our municipalities have been dealing with. So we're still dealing with a lot of things on a regular basis. Some of them have become more extreme than they were, but what I think we see in the chart and the statistics is that as our numbers grow, we are going to face more and more. And we can only manage this. We can't really stop it. Okay, and I see that I'm out of time. And thank you for the opportunity, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thanks so much, Robin. We'll get to that during the Q&A, but I think one of the most interesting things you highlighted was the fact that having data helps all of us make informed decision-making. So thank you for using that illustration. The next speaker will be Mayor Brian Saunderson.
Thank you, Rosalind, and thank you to the Institute and the organizers for putting this event together. It's been a very informative series, and I'm certainly learning a lot as we go through this process, as well as being on the social community funding working group, which is as well teaching me a lot. I think that hearing from the previous three speakers, Mayor Clumpus, Deputy Mayor Potter, and Mayor McQueen, there is certainly a great deal of similarity of the issues that we're all facing. And I think growth pressures is top of that, followed by infrastructure and keeping pace, as well as transportation and the impacts on our communities for doing that. And I think what we're seeing in our communities is the tension between the growth that's coming and the impacts on our community and what our community wants to see. And we see through our community-based strategic plan, which we did in 2015 and then updated recently, that there is a very strong urge in our community to make sure that we protect our green spaces, that we grow sustainably, and that we grow smart, that we enhance community well-being as we grow, and that we keep the public connections to well, in Collingwood, our waterfront, but to our natural environment. And so I think the real question that I see today that I'd like to talk about is the changes. What will post-pandemic municipal government look like? And I think this is a great example today in this forum of the impact of community groups and stakeholder groups on the direction of municipal governments, as well as the importance of a regional perspective. And I think that if we look at municipal government as really a partnership with local stakeholders and residents, to look at how we can proactively invest in the resiliency and sustainability of our communities and our region. And I think that encompasses, as Rob Potter indicated, economically, socially, environmentally, and culturally. And frankly, I see those four broad categories as being the municipal equivalents of the social determinants of public health. And how we are addressing these elements in our communities really is reflective of the health of that community. And I think what we're hearing today is that addressing them within the community there's broader regional impacts. And for the mayors involved today, we straddle a county line. We straddle our community boundaries, our school district boundaries, our LIN and health district boundaries, as well as the regional tourism boundaries. So there's these number of, to some degree, artificial boundaries that separate us, while the issues that we face are largely similar, very similar, with small local differences. And I think what we need to keep in mind, and I think what we're going to see in the post-pandemic world, is that the traditional boundaries of municipal government are going to soften and blur. And we're going to move, I think, towards a more interactive and collaborative approach to municipal government. Really, it's a partnership between the municipality, and that's the council and staff at Town Hall, and the residents and stakeholders of our communities. And we look at how we're going to grow as well as grow our economy. If you look at planning principles for the number of residents that you're planning, new dwellings you're planning, that comes with an associated number of new jobs you're going to create. So economic development goes hand in hand with growth of your population. And in Collingwood, when the McLean's magazine ranked us as the 22nd best community to live in Canada 2 years ago, they found that 66% of our workforce lived and worked in Collingwood. And that's quite a remarkable statistic for a community our size. And I think if you broaden that scope out and looked at the regional rings, concentric rings taking you out into the town of Blue Mountains, Grey Highlands, Clearview, Wasaga Beach, and even within Simcoe County, that number is probably a lot higher. And I think what you're going to see post-pandemic is that these regional economies, the self-sustaining nature of these regional economies is going to become increasingly important because we've seen as the impact of the pandemic that we've had to be self-sufficient in terms of our services, our suppliers, and our businesses, and shopping local has been a big initiative. And I think that will continue on afterwards. And I think what we'll see is the need for regional perspective in terms of how we create jobs and how we work together in creating jobs. And Collingwood is creating, and we're investing in an accelerator. And our first cohort is looking at trying to increase small businesses with less than 5 employees to 8 to 10 employees, looking at ways that we can generate those solid, well-paying jobs for our local workforce as we grow our population. We're also going to see, I think, with the post-COVID crisis, and we've certainly seen the spike in demand for real estate, people are telecommuting. And so now it's not important to be near the office. Your living room can be your office, and we're finding it's more important for people where they live. And so that's increasing the already existing burden on us in terms of growth demands and prices. And we've had quite a discussion today already about the affordable and attainable housing spectrum. And that certainly is a very important aspect for us moving forward. Another example I'd like to use just quickly is of a regional and cooperative approach is our Health Alliance of South Georgian Bay. They brought together, I think, probably 40 or 45 service providers in the healthcare sector, and they've been responsible for a number of really strong initiatives that have helped promote health in our community, from the OPP mental health referral, getting those people, getting frequent flyers for 911 calls associated with the mental health supports they need, has helped to reduce that. So our police are now answering more important calls. We've seen it also in our ambulance services and healthcare and social services sector, that they ask a number of questions. And if you answer yes to any 2 of them, it shows that there's economic vulnerability there and health security, food security issues. And so that is helping to match those people with the services they need. And these, I think, are community examples of how we've worked together, I think, to better our services for our residents. And I think the regional initiative is an important lens to look at as we work to address the challenges, I think, that are fairly common across the board for all of us. And to Mayor McQueen's suggestion about tourism, about promoting tourism amongst our regions so that people come to visit one location will be encouraged to go and visit other locations. And so I think these are the sort of low-hanging fruit that we can, that are just simple examples of things that we can do by working regionally to address the post-pandemic life. But I think there will be many challenges for us in municipal sector. We have to keep open minds. We don't know what all those challenges will be. We're going to find out as we go forward. But I think working together and sharing best practices and looking at working with our stakeholders and our residents, who I consider to be essentially our investors, our shareholders, and we want to make sure that they get maximum return on their investment with their tax dollars.
Great. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you.
I think it was really interesting, the statistic that you used, about 66% of a workforce lived and worked within the community, and that equaled a great place to live. So another data point that we might consider for a framework. And now I'd like to introduce our final speaker for today, Mayor Nina Bifolchi. Nina, over to you.
Thank you. Sorry, I couldn't get my mute off there. Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation to join you today. As far as describing the changing roles of municipalities post-pandemic, unless the province changes the Municipal Act or the County of Simcoe Act that outlines the roles of local municipalities and counties, I don't see much change for Wasaga Beach post-pandemic. Municipalities will emerge stronger or weaker after we get through this. And in all honesty, I believe Wasaga Beach will be stronger. While we made alterations to our operations and facilities in order to adhere to the provincial COVID orders, we continued working and serving our residents, businesses, and developers. Municipalities were deemed essential, so we put measures in place to ensure a safe work environment. And quite frankly, we have not really skipped too many beats. As a mayor, I am extremely proud of our staff and our team here. They've been working hard to deliver the services that we're mandated to deliver. As the level of government closest to the people, we need to have the ability to make decisions quickly to address changes imposed by external factors. Developing the confidence and ability to address issues and change direction if it works better when crisis hit is something I see Wasaga Beach continuing to do moving forward. The top 3 issues for the municipality: creation of year-round jobs, investment in core municipal infrastructure such as our new Twin Pet Arena and Library, road improvements, and park refurbishment. And number 3, I threw in social media, communication, and ensuring that the facts of a matter, whether the matter was discussed yesterday or 3 years ago, are available for the public to review. The creation of year-round jobs has been a challenge at times due to the past seasonality of Wasaga Beach and businesses, but that is changing. Population growth and entrepreneurs investing in year-round businesses to service the population are employing more people year-round. The Small Business Enterprise Center is a great forum for sharing success stories and helping others with their business plans. Investment in municipal infrastructure is always required to keep the core functions of the municipality operating. This comes at a cost to our residents. Therefore, we are always looking out for grants from senior levels of government to help pay the cost. Roads, bridges, facilities, water and sewer upgrades, playgrounds, and parks are things that are needed for our residents and community. Over the years, successive councils have planned for the future to ensure Wasaga Beach is well positioned for growth, building on the great quality of life that is offered in our community. Knowledge sharing is so important due to the misinformation that is spread on social media. I believe this is something we all struggle with these days. The lack of respect for others, people hiding behind their keyboards and spewing lies has become the norm. In Wasaga Beach, we created Truth Corner, which can be found on our website. Far too often, as politicians, we are expected to ignore bad behavior of others and let certain things go. Well, in Wasaga Beach, if someone wants to put a bold-faced lie on social media or intentionally attempt to harm the reputation of our valued staff, they need to be prepared to be called out publicly, and the lie will be corrected. Sometimes people tell lies over and over and over, and it starts to become people's truth. So the days of social media, we really need to be addressing that. A regional perspective has its merits. We face many of the same challenges as our municipal neighbors. Through the county of Simcoe, we're able to take a regional approach to deliver the delivery of such things as regional transportation, social services, waste management, affordable housing, and long-term care. On a smaller scale in the South Georgia Bay area, we can certainly look for ways to work together, such as support for hospital, seamless transportation through our communities, and tourism initiatives. I read with interest the 5 recommendations from the South Georgia Bay Tourism Task Force. Our challenge as political leaders is to endorse these recommendations and task our staff to work with our provincial partners to implement them so our local businesses can start to benefit coming out of COVID. Too many times we do these types of reviews and the recommendations sit on a shelf. However, as much as I support collaboration, it doesn't work for every issue. I find that far too often we spend a lot of time attempting to collaborate and holding long meetings and attempting to find common ground. We sometimes collaborate to death and get nowhere. The needs of my municipality versus others will differ. So quickly figure out what you have in common, leave the rest, and get to work. Pushing one municipality's initiative onto others will not lead to a better outcome for the people that we represent. So find out where we can work and get to work and do it together. So hopefully that answers the questions that were posed of us for this evening. So again, thank you.
Thanks very much, Nina. Yeah, I think totally agree that alignment is key. And so a large part of this conversation and your point about knowledge sharing too is really to share success stories from all kinds of places that we haven't heard of, or explore and learn about new ways that we can have access to capital, and to see if collaboration can actually provide some kind of acceleration to working together to access funds that are available. So there's lots of opportunity here. So thank you very much for your comments. So I'll open up the floor to the speakers, whoever would like to jump in on some of these questions, and to say, we've covered a lot of territory, and there is alignment on some issues. People are seeing some of the connectivity between issues. You can't really talk about a labor force unless we know where they're going to get a house, and how that then affects things like transportation, which then affects things like the environment. So things are connected. So I would ask each of you to let me know, what did you think was interesting that you heard from your other colleagues? Who would like to go first? Brian. Brian and then Rob.
Okay, thanks, Rosalind. Well, as I indicated, it was amazing for me to, well, I guess, confirm or affirmatory to hear the similarity in the issues that we're facing as a region. And I think that starting from that similarity, as you indicated with the alignment, if there's an alignment in the terms of the challenges we're facing, then that leads to a healthy discussion about what solutions might be and how you connect. But I think there's also, in terms of attainable housing, Collingwood has a fairly defined settlement area, and so our prices on homes have gone up dramatically, as has other areas, but we were starting already from a high point. So increasing municipal intertransportation between municipalities may be a good resolution for us in terms of attainable housing to get people from the other communities into Collingwood if they work here, and as well people who live here to work in other communities. So I think that the attainable housing and transportation are interconnected, strongly interconnected. And I also think that, the sustainability aspect from an environmental perspective, it plays into that as well. So if we can have adequate or comprehensive public transportation, that lessens the need for an individual to have a car, and planning complete communities would also assist in that as well, so that people can walk as well to where they need to get. So I think the sustainability is so interconnected on all those fronts, and hearing the comments from the other mayors certainly emphasize that for me.
Thank you, Brian. Rob.
Thank you. And Brian kind of stole what I was going to say. It is interesting how much we have to say that is alike. We're all dealing with a lot of the same issues, but we have specific issues that are ours and ours alone, but we're all dealing with things like broadband. Perhaps the rural municipalities more than Collingwood, but even in Collingwood, I know there are issues where there are areas where broadband is not reliable or affordable. So those kind of things, and broadband is no longer about Netflix. It's about medical practitioners, veterinarians, farmers are desperate for more broadband. Everything that we deal with, even in areas that are very close to our settlement areas, we have shortage of broadband. So we're all dealing with that. We're all dealing with climate change. We're all going to be dealing with this changing population and growth that we've already noted. And we all have to work together on that. I think every one of us recognizes that finding the right answers is the hard part. To just say, well, let's regionalize everything sounds great, but then how do we actually do that and make it financially viable, make it work? How do we regionalize transit, for example, in a way that works for everyone, especially the people who use it, not just the municipalities? So there are a lot of those kind of issues. Attainable housing is certainly crucial to our economy because without it, we aren't going to be able to sustain the local economy. So we need our small businesses, and they need employees, and those employees need housing. So it all ties together, and we all tie together. So I could go on and on, but I will stop there.
Thank you. Actually, you're very succinct, Robin. I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of a good example of interconnectivity, but you also added to the list that I'm trying to write down of, the needs and alignment. So maybe we could take a slightly different approach. And the question would be for our speakers, what sort of outcomes would you find helpful to track in a journey towards a more sustainable future? And if those outcomes provided the end game, then we could talk about projects that would address the interconnectivity of some of these issues. So what kind of outcomes do you think would be good to track? I'll give you an example. Brian mentioned it earlier, 66% of the workforce lived and worked in the community. That's an interesting outcome.
I could maybe try to address a little bit of that. Just on the employment side, I mean, from a historical value, the Collingwood shipyards was a huge employer for the region for a lot of years. And we saw the transformation of that back in 1984 when the shipyards closed, and we transformed in more into a tourism area. That changed the whole jobs. I remember the whole back in 1999 when they talked about Interwest coming, and just that whole transformation of reading that going, how could that ever happen? Well, it happened. It happened in a huge way. And so, and we go back to that book by Boom, Bust and Echo, and you and I spoke about this a few weeks back with David Foote. He was pretty much bang on about the Collingwood region and how that transformation has changed our area. And we don't talk about it much, but we were talking about it a few years ago, the aging baby boomer and the disposable income and that whole thing that's moving. I think it's happening. We see that. We see the transformation of that. So from a perspective of our region, I'm going to go back to the cultural part for a second. I know we're talking about the employment part, but culturally, we have so much to offer in our area as a region. And so you got reasons why, you got employment parts, you have reasons why people are coming here. Why are people coming here? It's a great place. How do we control that? Right. And so from that, how do we, so for example, from a cultural area, I know I haven't done much traveling in my life, but I plan to do that later on in my life, maybe when I retire. But you go to places to find out the history, and that's sort of something that I'm very interested in, the history and how did the area become the way it is? Well, we have a really strong history in our area, and it's so unique and it's so diverse, but it sort of pulls us and ties us all together. And so I think that's a very huge asset that we need to do collectively and to control. And I talked about a little bit in my part about tourism. How do we control the part that flows people through our area in a very respectful, and we see that COVID has sort of turned that on its head with regards to mass over tourism. I think we found, was it a few years back on the grotto up in the Bruce Peninsula, where there was over tourism and there's just so many people on that national park. So we need to control that. I know that there's a lot of the bigger issues, but I just look at that cultural part as how do we work through that part. I know I've been in Wasaga Beach when it's a hot, sunny weekend as a younger person, and it's just packed. Or you have a great winter skiing and the ski hills are just covered, but it's a lot to do with weather. And, but one of the last thing I'll leave it, Rosin, it goes back to healthcare and a hospital. And that is key for our area, is the healthcare and that whole part of expanding and growing with our hospital in our region.
So I'm just going to put you on the spot, Paul, and try to distill that down to an outcome. that you might want to track, because you talked about our cultural our cultural heritage, our environmental heritage of the land as assets. So is there something in there that interests you?
Well, we need to control it, but control it in a positive way, whether it's employment, whether it's moving people through. I think we even in Grey Highlands, we have a few spots like Old Baldy, Eugenia Falls, Epping Lookout, the Niagara, the Niagara Escarpment with the Bruce Trail. We're seeing over tourism even right now, and it's probably a lot to do with COVID. But how do we move people through that it's organized so then it's not everybody showing up at one spot? But
it's kind of like careful what you wish for. I spoke with one of the park rangers at the grotto, and I said, how did all this happen? And it's successful marketing efforts. So how do we be intentional with what we're doing? But I'd like to open it up. If I'd like to open it up to the other speakers just on the outcomes question. So what should we be tracking? What outcomes are we looking for, which will help us make these decisions about interconnected issues and investment in those? Barb or Rob?
Thanks, thanks, Marilyn. I would just like to comment. There was a question that came out. Has anyone else issued a climate change emergency within the community? And we have within the municipality, Meaford. However, we have been stalled on any activity and any action in that regard. So as an outcome, I think maybe this is something that would be very, very helpful for us moving forward in initiating more activity and more action in that regard. If I may, I just would like to say how impressed I am with my colleagues in this job around Southern Georgian Bay. We are somewhat Johnny-come-lately in terms of the experience of rapid growth and the tsunami that we've coined here for what is hitting us, and the depth of experience and expertise that is around this base of Georgian Bay is going to be invaluable to us. So everyone has that opportunity to contribute to this learning that we have. We have had some success, in fact, just established our first attainable housing complex, which was a perfect example of an interaction between a community in a group invested in responsible growth, which is what we're so happy to see. And that sustainable community, Loon Call, it's called, is going to put a mark, I think, on further development in our area. There's still some questions, of course, as we move along about collaboration with our neighbors and so on. But I think this is absolutely critical to grow and to understand the challenges that others have faced before us, and how can we then translate that into moving our objectives and the challenges that are unique. As Nina has stated, I certainly agree and appreciate that with those challenges that we have. So if I had to choose one, I think it would be because of the climate emergency. I think we're dealing through the experiences of others that have been shared with some of the growth initiatives, revisiting our official plan and so on, and interacting solidly with community groups that are able to provide their level of expertise to our challenges as well. So thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Barb. The last question for speakers before we move to the audience participant questions. If we were 10 times bolder, how would we be sharing resources towards reaching better outcomes?
If I could, I think that's a tough question.
Yeah.
Because 10 times bolder starts, for example, getting into that darned old money question.
Yeah.
You know, we would love to be a lot bolder and a lot go at these problems in a lot bigger way if we could, but we have so many demands on our budgets, and that's just one part of it. Not everybody wants us to do certain things. You know, not everybody wants us to do attainable housing. Not everybody wants us to worry about the shoreline. Not everybody wants us to worry about waste management issues. So we face that all the time. I'm sure the others could chime in with some of the other challenges we face in dealing with these. So it's not a question of being bolder. We would have no problem being bolder. It's whether we have the resources available to us and whether we can get community support for everything. And I'll leave it at that because I'm sure the others could fill in the blanks.
Thanks, Rob. Other thoughts?
Just a quick comment. In Grey County and even our Grey Highlands official plan, we have allowed for secondary units on one piece of property, along with we've changed our zoning to accommodate that. And there are certain provisions on that. And that's one of the things that we've sort of supported to try to help a little bit of that housing. But I think it's something that maybe could be shared with other municipalities, but it's a tough question, as Rob has said. It is a tough question, but I do have a famous quote I want to quote at the end here about that.
Okay. Last comments before a famous quote?
Can I just jump on this one?
Sure.
I saw something within the comments there, and they were asking about, you know, the social media aspect of it. And I think really it's up to the leadership and the mayors and deputy mayors and council members to be bold and put yourselves out there with your community. In Wasaga Beach, communication is everything. Our social media is ridiculous on Facebook. So we've done different things to reach out to the community, be it we have prior to COVID, Coffee with Council, where we get engaged with them. They can just pop in. It's not stressful. They don't have to come to a council meeting. But the communication, you know, the monthly newsletters, where they can sign up for these things, you need to engage your people. And, you know, we have bang the table things on our it's called type thing on our website, that's how you're going to engage with them. And it's scary. Don't get me wrong. You put it out there and you're opening it up for all kinds of criticism, but you need to speak to the people in your community, and you need to communicate. So that's my thoughts.
Great. Thanks, Nina. I think you're absolutely right about engaging people, and why, and most importantly, is because we don't know. I mean, really, we don't know the depth of resources within our own communities, or how to think differently about changing things like secondary housing units that could accelerate things. We haven't talked much about access to new capital. We haven't talked much about philanthropy and where does that fit. We have not yet spoken much about the deep value of not-for-profit organizations and other groups who can help address some of these issues. So this idea of working multi-sectorally is something that we're going to continue as a theme. I'm going to let you close this section with a quote, Paul, and then we'll move over to questions from the audience. Paul, your quote.
I think he's frozen.
We will come back to Paul for his quote. Marilyn, what are we seeing in the chat for questions?
Well, just recap just a little bit before we get to the questions. We asked people what were our mayors not saying? What are the issues that mayors are not covering here? just to be a bit provocative, but I have to say that there was a lot of resonance with what people were saying in the chat with what our mayors were saying as well. So it sort of falls into three groups: people talking about green development, being bee friendly, organizations like Transition Meaford was an example, who are working with municipal staff on a plan for recycling, the way that these kind of partnerships between the nonprofit sector and the municipalities can bring us to new places. There's a lot of interest in growth, the inevitability of growth now, that it isn't about stopping growth. It's actually about really a huge effort to be proactive, to be ahead of it, to manage it appropriately, to make it as green as it can be, and to do that from a regional lens as well. And quite a bit of concern about how the money will flow over the next while. That the data, I think, was a bit scary for people, seeing the influx of people coming in. A suggestion that when seasonal occupants become full-time occupants, actually tax revenue isn't going to change very much, but the demand for services will. And someone else worrying then about the growth of vulnerable people in our region, and also how we get a sufficient quantity of primary care. Really strong provocative statement is the reality is that we have an inflow of wealth and an outflow of workforce, and that this isn't going to work, that this is going to be a bind later on. So lots of kind of development questions going forward, building on what the mayors have said. There's a bunch of good questions, really hard to choose one or two, but I will do that. Let's go down to Nancy. Asks a provocative question. Such terrific presentations from all mayors, she says. What's the biggest challenge of not getting to where you want to be in your municipality and region? So let's leave that one. And then Roz, there's another great question about collaboration we'll come to.
Someone who want to take that question on? Brian?
Yes, thank you. I think it's a great question. And I think one of the biggest challenges, and it's been alluded to today, I think, is engaging the public, understanding what the desires are in the community, but also what your capacity is at the council table and what's within your capability. I think that knowing the expectations and also measuring them. I mean, I think what gets measured gets done. And so I think it's incumbent on council to establish its priorities with input from the public, and then make benchmarks, establish benchmarks, and then report back to the public. Did we accomplish what we worked out together as our plan? And I think that would be my response to that.
Thank you. Is there another question? Or Paul, do you have comments on that one?
Just quickly, workforce and the ability to live here and work from the millennial side. You and I spoke a couple of weeks back where we saw the high price of real estate in the GTA, where we were relatively better off where we were, but that's all changed now in the last 2 years. So I think that's going to be a huge thing. I think it's so important that we be creative on how we look at how we can keep a workforce here, because there still needs to be things done, and trades are one of those things that are very important for our area. But it's just, how do we maintain that workforce that can live here? They can't stay in our basements forever.
All right.
Someone else or another question?
Let me give you another question then. This is from David, and it's to Nina's point, that not all issues in a municipality need collaboration. And I think we've heard a fair degree of commitment and interest in collaboration, not just between municipalities, but between sectors and between municipalities over the course of these sessions. So David asks, could you speak to some key areas to start where collaboration actually would be helpful, and give us some success as we learn how to do it? Rob.
Yeah, actually, I was going to point out earlier that we work on a regional basis and across our municipal boundaries all the time. And we work with, for example, with Meaford, Collingwood, Grey Highlands. I believe Clearview is involved too and June can sort me out if I'm missing anybody in the physician recruitment program, because we all recognize that that's a regional issue. The same goes for broadband. We and Grey Highlands have worked together. It's something that we communicate with regularly. Transportation is certainly another issue. But beyond just that, we also work with the private sector. So in the Blue Mountains, for example, we have partnerships formed with 3 different internet service providers who are interested in expanding broadband to the rural areas. We have a couple of private developers who are interested in having an attainable housing element in their development. So we're seeing that. I know Meaford has a very interesting development coming on stream soon that we heard about at Grey County just recently. So we're already working across those, and of course we work with the other levels of government as well. So we're doing that already, and you know, these relationships often take time to form. Some of them are new ones that have become necessary because of COVID. And broadband is a great example. When we've seen as a result of COVID how desperate we are to improve rural and small town access, because otherwise our citizens become second class. Our farmers can't compete with their counterparts around the world. And believe me, these programs are in place in other countries. So if we aren't doing them, it may be our little region we're talking about, but it affects how we stand in the world. And if we are going to be competitive and able to sustain our communities and not become ghost towns in the long run. You only need to look at the history of the railroads to see the ghost towns that were left when railroads bypassed them. We were lucky because the railroads came through our area. So we need to keep working on that basis and to go just beyond our local governments, but to the private sector, to our residents, to many others, if we're going to make sense of all this.
Thank you, Rob. I'm going to pause there because I think all of your comments have basically summarized that collaboration. Everybody sounds like we've got agreement on that. Alignment, there's certainly alignment in many different areas. Multi-sectoral partnerships, which Rob highlighted for us, are there. I know that there's going to be some question in the chat that you might want to keep your eye on in terms of what advice would you offer to municipal leaders on how municipalities can evolve to meet pressing needs. And as that's happening in the chat, we have 5 minutes to go and ask our speakers for their famous last words. And so I'm going to ask you to think about, from what you're hearing, what will change? What should change so that we can accomplish over the next 2 years the kind of aspirational things that we've been talking about here. So from your perspective, your last words, what will change and what can we accomplish in 2 years from what you're hearing so that we're doing things differently? And Paul, I know that you've got a quote ready to roll. So I'm going to let you share that quote now while other speakers are thinking about what to say, and I'm going to go plug in my Mac so I don't lose everyone.
Okay, well thank you for that, Rosalind, and I'll try to be very clear with this quote. 20 years from now, you may be more disappointed by the things you didn't do by the things you did do. And that was a famous quote by Mark Twain. So I think that's going to what your question, Rosalind, is, you know, what should we be doing? And I know I shared that with you earlier on today, but I can just say that again. 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things you didn't do than by the things you did.
Thank you. Barb, do you have last words, famous last words?
I don't know how famous they'll be, but I would like to reference our loon call development that has been mentioned before as an example of what we are going to be doing differently and what is a success story for us. And that is collaboration with our stakeholders and with our residents. This proposal, a very exciting proposal, came to us with the idea of truly a sustainable and attainable development that was going to provide housing for first-time home buyers and be truly reachable. And there was a lot of skepticism about this and a lot of pushback from the community. But I have to say that it took some time. We believed in the project, we believed in the developer, and our CAO and Director of Community Development took it upon himself and did a fabulous job of facilitating the discussion between stakeholders and the developers involved, and came out with a solution that everybody is happy to live with. And what happens is, how do you tell? The question was asked, how do you tell when it's really been a success? And his comment to answer to that was, when neither party is absolutely 100% satisfied, you know that you've reached a compromise that is workable and is attainable. And so of any big learning for us, that was huge. And we are progressing along that path, interacting with our community groups that are new to the area, that are just coming in with their own unique perspective, and opening this up to including them in the review and refresh of our official plan, which has to take place. And just a note on that, because I noticed there was a question on that as well. We've had, during my relationship here in governance, this will be our third go around for our official plan. The first two, we had no one in attendance from the public. And this one is going to be very, very different. It starts on May 17th, next Monday, and I know already we're going to have a lot of interaction with that, and that is a very good thing. So thank you again for having me.
Good, Rob.
Keep talking and keep listening. That's, you know, I think what the Institute is doing is very helpful. I can't always attend, but I usually do find out from, usually someone from council has gone and we hear about what some of the key points that came out. But I think if we keep the conversations going, we'll find the solutions. That's been the way this area has worked since the beginning. You know, going back to the mid 1800s when all these communities started, they realized they had to work together in order to survive because they were so far from anywhere else. We are a lot closer now, but we still have to work together to protect our area and try to preserve it in the way that we appreciate it, and yet provide a place for young families to come, to start a small business, to learn, and so on. So we just have to keep working at it. As Paul said, you know, they used to say the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today.
Thank you. That's great.
So I think that's really the key point is it's never too late to at least try.
Very good. And Brian, you get final words?
Oh, that sounds weighty. Listen, I think we have learned today that there are a great many challenges facing all of our municipalities as well as our regions. And I think 2 years from now, I would like to be able to say we've faced those challenges head on, that we have made responsible plans after extensive consultation with our stakeholders, and the collaboration can be with other communities, but also inside our community with our own residents and stakeholders. And I think they're addressing those challenges, meeting them head on, and getting an evidence-based plan moving forward would be a good. After 2 years for me, that would be a good position.
That's great. And is Nina still on the call? Nina?
Yeah, I'm still here. Thank you.
Great. Famous last words?
Engage and listen, get the facts, agree to disagree, be respectful of others' opinions and interests, but also recognize that sometimes we need to step back and stay in our own lane. Thank you.
Thanks, Nina. And I'm just going to give an honorary last word to Mayor Doug Measures of Clearview. Doug, what do you think?
Thank you, Rosalind, for including me. It has been very interesting and very encouraging to hear my fellow mayors and our deputy mayor from Town of Blue Mountains join and speak about collaboration. It's a very good point to collaborate, and it's also a very good point to come together and have these open discussions. And so I think you've done a good job here today bringing forward some of those issues. I would ask that residents remember that these decisions that politicians make are those that have to be made and sometimes cost money. And we respect tax dollars in every decision we make. We all do. We absolutely do. And that's the only way we can do this, is to continue to respect that. So it's not as easy as it looks, that's for sure. Good job. Thank you for letting me join you.
Thanks, Doug. And just in closing, we have a couple of minutes and so many thank yous, certainly to all of our wonderful speakers. You've been open and honest and insightful and inspiring in terms of the success already happening and the acknowledgement that there's so much more to do. So we're here to help in any way we can, and thank you very much for speaking today. Obviously, to all of the participants who have joined us, at one point, I think we had over 85 people. Really appreciate you carving out the time. Your chat comments have not been for naught. We are going to be developing a short paper that we hope to present to the mayors and CAOs for their consideration at one of their upcoming roundtables, perhaps. We would like to thank for sure all of the support that our partners and our lead partners and supporting partners have given us. The design team for all of your efforts, thank you very much. And I would like to ask everyone to put Wednesday, June 16th at 4:30 in your calendars for the next event. It's been raised before. We do want to protect our beautiful environment here. So we're going to be having a session which relates back to the one of the top items that came out of the UN Habitat and Towns Collingwood World Summit last year around proactive approaches to environmental challenges, and we will be bringing success stories from other places so that we can learn together, and that way it will accelerate our own progress. Marilyn or Catherine, have I missed anything or anyone?
Great.
Hearing nothing, thank you. Thank you all. It's 6 o'clock. Have a wonderful evening. Enjoy yourselves. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.